maybe we'll do it a couple times. I see someone on their iPhone.
Okay, we're at 1 o'clock. So Barbara, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, I think we should start. We're going to be letting people in, but we have a hard stop at like 1 to 2, so we want to
Okay.
do as good as we can.
All right. So why is this? Oh, there we go. All right. So hello and thank you and welcome to this meditative eating class. I just wanted to introduce, if anybody doesn't know Melissa, she does an amazing class on Sunday self-care, chair chi prana. So if you haven't seen her before, you might want to go ahead and take a look on Sunday mornings. We also want to let you know we have it is Discover Your Senior Center Month. Tomorrow we had last week the spa day. Tomorrow we have tech day, so we're going to have bingo, we're going to have some games, we're going to have a couple other things with Tabitha. It's going to be great. On the 20th next week we have Friends Day, so that's going to be giveaways, the Barbie movie. So if anybody has to sign up, you have to sign up. We have a few showings of that, and then in the evening a dinner and online dating. So that's going to be on the 20th. The 22nd will be best health, flu shots, fall prevention, just things about health. And then on the 27th, we have Be Your Best Artist Day with April doing some class and some other artwork. So saying that, I am going to, Margie is now going to spotlight Melissa, and we will let her continue with meditative eating. Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, we have to sign up for the flu shot.
I don't know. Well, I'll find
Who
out.
does it, Friday?
I don't know. I'll find out.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you, Barbara, for the introduction and for inviting me to do this special Zoom meditative eating. I thought it was a great idea when Barbara asked me about it. And I'm sure it's of interest to many, many people because of our busy lives, our busy days. We often, don't even realize.
I accidentally just muted you. I was muting somebody.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, I think it's something that's of interest to many people. And in fact, I had a couple of books on my bookshelf with regard to this very topic. So I will be reading a little bit. It's a pretty big book, so I won't read the whole thing. I'll read a little bit from this book, Savor. And really the parts that I'm going to be reading from are by Thich Nhat Hanh. The rest of some of the book does have nutrition and weight loss, but that's not at all the focus of this class at all. But I am a big fan of Thich Nhat Hanh. He was a wonderful spiritual leader, and I use his books in many of my classes. So one of my favorite books is very small handbook, and he has a passage in here as well about mindful eating. So peace is every step. And so between these two books, we'll have our sources for today. So I guess what we will need, and with so many people in this class, there's 25 of us, obviously we're not all going to have the same foods, but try to have an assortment of foods that represent different flavors and consistencies. And it could also be some are, quote unquote healthy, some are, treats. It doesn't matter. There's no judgment. This is all going to be a fun, interactive, experiential class. So I have something soft. So I have some cottage cheese. For my crunchy food item, I'm going to use rice cakes. I have some nuts. I even have, like, this is chewy, so I have some organic licorice, gluten-free. And I have for my fruit, dried fruit, raisin. Raisins are often used in mindfulness training, and we'll do that in a moment. But if you don't have a raisin, that's fine. Any food item will suffice. And then I also have a plum. So have an assortment, whatever it is. And while And I thought even right now, while I'm doing the overview, take one food item, one or two food items, and just start eating while you're listening to me. And I also wanted to, I thought we could, if there were people who feel comfortable sharing, and of course this is recorded, so keep that in mind. But if anyone wants to share why they were interested in taking this class, go ahead and raise your hand. And everyone else, like keep eating. Don't eat all your food, but do a little bit of eating. And I see Margie has raised her hand. So go ahead, Margie.
So I'm a chronic super fast eater. And I chronically do other things while I'm eating. And it really has affected my stomach, including like my acid reflux. And I also like the sensation of a lot of food going down my throat quickly. I don't know what that means sexually or whatever, but it's just a thing. So I really want this class.
Great. Thanks for sharing. And I think a lot of people can relate. I'll just say in my family, on my father's side, we're all fast eaters. And on my mother's side, we generally are not. And so we would have our big family gatherings for the holidays. My father's side would be done. And then they would be like, and I tend to be more like my mother. Then they would point to us. And we were also eating, the European way with the knife and the fork. And it takes longer as well to eat that way. And they would look at us and laugh like, oh my gosh, you guys are such slow eaters. So I do think there's also like cultural, family, what we grew up with as well. Some families tend to be really fast eaters. Anyone else? Let me just go to anyone else want to share why they wanted to take, and I'll share in a minute why I was interested as well. Looking at the view. Let me go into gallery. Raise your hand if you want to offer a comment. Barbara, unmute. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Okay.
Yes. I think that I could learn a lot from this class because I don't give myself time often to sit down and eat, and I am retired and have no excuse, but I will eat this yogurt standing up, like at the sink, and thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner or do something else later. And I'll say to myself after I do it, why could you not five minutes to sit down and eat that? And sometimes I forget almost that I eat it because I'm doing so many other things. And then even when I sit down, I want to look at my phone, or it's like for 5 minutes. I really think I should not do that. It would be so much better for me.
Yeah. And one thing too is I'm trying to remember who taught me this, but also like using the word, I could rather than I should. Because then when we say, oh, I should, or I have to be doing it this way, I have to be eating, just looking at the food, that becomes a burden as well. So we want to make this an invitation and not have it feel like punishment, oh, we're switching our habits. So this is an invitation to explore. But I think many of us can relate. I think I told you yesterday, Barbara, that in the past, especially before COVID, there were a lot of times where I would eat my lunch commuting between classes, whether it was on the subway or walking. And and I couldn't even really remember what I had eaten, but I was just rushing in that New York City lifestyle. So COVID in a way has helped to slow things down because a lot of us are now working from home. But thanks for sharing. And maybe one more comment.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to see who's speaking.
We're over here in the workshop room.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And hi, Melissa. I used to eat like that, even at work, when I used to work, take my time and all that. With my husband, we would have, the same thing. But lately, because I have so many things in my head, I find myself that I'm just cannot wait to finish eating because I have to do, and I don't know if that's good for the stomach or not to. And the same thing, pick up a yogurt and eat it and walk around. So I don't know if it's good or not. It's mental, no?
Yeah. So what I was just saying about myself eating on the run, my cousin, who's also a yoga teacher, but also graduated from a nutrition program, she got her master's. I think when I told her that, she said to me, "Oh, really, it's best that you sit down and that you eat and not be walking or doing something else simultaneously because it is better for your digestive system, for for the food and absorbing more of the nutrients from it." So I think, I'm not a nutritionist, but she did tell me that, and I've never forgotten that, that we want to sit. I think, well, there's one thing in the book that we'll get to in a minute, but it also helps to release the digestive enzymes, which help to break down the food, and those start actually in the mouth. So when we're rushing and we're eating too quickly and we're not breaking down the food, it can impact our digestive system. I have, like Margie had mentioned, I've had acid reflux in the past. And I'm sure it's pretty common, right? Because you see how many acid reflux medications there are in the pharmacies. So did anyone else have? We'll ask one more comment, then we'll get going. And if you were eating while I was talking and everyone else was talking, you could put the food down, and so we don't eat all our sample food. But was there anyone else that wanted to share? I'm going to go into the second screen. No, I don't think so. All right. And you can also, I see somebody wrote in the chat. Yeah, so somebody wrote, "I tend to be an impulsive eater, usually triggered by stress." Very, very common. So a lot of people will like overeat to reduce stress, but then there are other people that actually don't eat at all when they're stressed and lose a lot of weight and don't get the appropriate nutrients. And then somebody else, Rini, wrote, "I like having soup for relaxation." Oh, that's nice. And soup generally is very, for most of us, nutritious and warming. So let's get started. And I'm going to go back to speaker view. You can, yeah, you're probably seeing me on speaker view in any event. And then feel free to use the chat feature again. I have it open. So let us first start with a breathing meditation, not eating, not drinking, and we'll open the meditative eating part of the class that way. So for those of you who take my yoga classes, we've done 3-part Dirga Swasam breath a lot in the class. So I think that's a very basic yoga breath work that works for pretty much everyone. What's nice to do is also add the hand movements or placement while we do the breathing. So I'm just going to scoot my bar stool a little further back. So you can take one hand to right below the collarbones. This is the heart center. The other hand can be to the belly button area. And unless your nose is stuffed, let's breathe in and out through the nose. You can open the eyes, keep them closed, totally up to you. And notice the movement of the breath in the body. There's an expansion as we inhale, and there is a natural softening as we exhale. Change the position of the hands. I don't like one hand to always be dominant, so go ahead and flip that. And maybe 2 or 3 more breaths. And even this, we did about 6 breaths or so, is something we can even do before we start eating. Just sit down and take maybe even 2 breaths or 3 breaths. Even that creates a transition from the busyness of the day or anything else we were doing to then beginning our meal or a snack. All right, bring the hands down and then please set an intention for your participation in this class, what you'd like to get out of it. And let's release our intentions. And then you can go ahead and open the eyes. Let's first, before I read from parts of this book, and I know some of you have come in late since I held it up, Saber, most of the sections I'll read are by Thich Nhat Hanh, not the nutritionist, because this is not a class on diet or weight loss, but the book has some stuff on that. Go ahead and let's take, I'm going to take a raisin. So maybe if you don't have a raisin, take a small piece of fruit. Raisins are really tiny. I have a golden raisin, not a red one today. And before we even eat it, whatever you have, take a moment to look at it. Really notice all the qualities of the whatever piece of food you're holding up. Notice the color, the texture, the size, the shape. Looking at it with fresh eyes. You know, a lot of times I know for myself, so I had raisins yesterday, and a lot of times I'll just grab a whole bunch. I'm not even looking at it. I put them in my mouth. Maybe I'm walking around the house. That's, you know, so this might feel very different. All right, now that you have fully noticed, taken in with your eyes, your food object, let's do a very slow eating meditation with this object. And try not to swallow it so quickly. Try to chew it fully. Notice while we're chewing.
Oh,
Sorry, that was unmuted. Notice the flavor. Again, the consistency that we viewed with our eyes, but now the consistency with our tongue. I'm still chewing mine. I really do want to swallow it, but I'm using my willpower to keep chewing a little bit more. And that was it. It disappeared. So I did swallow it. And probably most of you have already swallowed your food item. Let's do that again with a different food. So does everyone have something that's crunchy? I have some rice cakes, some thin rice cakes. Whatever you have that's crunchy or a different consistency than your raisin, let's go ahead and take that object. All right, so again, let's really look at it, the color. And with the rice cake, it's got some interesting designs, almost a little like a brickwork. And notice if it's heavy, if it's light. And now we're ready to eat it. So again, if it's crunchy, you can really listen. I'm sorry if I'm talking with my mouth full. We can listen to the sound that the food is making. And I know sometimes when you're with someone else and they're eating something crunchy, it can be really annoying, right? But we're unless you're in the center, we're probably by ourselves. So you can make as much crunching noise as you want. Again, trying to chew fully and then swallowing it down. Let's just do one more item before we do a little bit of sharing. I'm curious about, while I was talking in the beginning of class, you guys were eating versus now while we're eating together more mindfully. So what other item? All right, maybe something chewy. I have this gluten-free organic licorice. That's pretty good. So again, looking at it, the color, consistency, is it heavy, light? Does it feel good to the touch? Obviously, most times we're eating, we're using knife and fork, but here we have little pieces, little snacks with our hands. Now go ahead and eat it, and same thing. Slow. How are the flavors? How do they compare to the two other items that we had earlier? And because we're doing a chewier one, it may take longer. So I'll just give us a little more time. This licorice is pretty chewy. Give me a few more minutes. And maybe by now we've all swallowed our chewy food item. For those of you who were in the class, I know people came in a little bit late. When I was chatting and was asking you to just eat some of the items versus now where we were looking at it, taking it in first with our eyes, then doing a very lengthy chewing meditation. Was there a difference in the flavors of the food? Did anyone notice? And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but it's, again, this is all experiential. When we go back to gallery view, and did anyone want to share their experiences? I know for myself, I found that the licorice especially was a lot more flavorful when I took the time to not gulp it down. And I do really love licorice. Anyone else notice?
Somebody
Different.
here.
The Dorito that I left, I ate after was very salty.
And what were you eating? I couldn't hear. Was it?
A tortilla chip.
Oh, so it tasted saltier when you did the slower eating.
Salt, yeah. The
Yes.
cucumber was kind of, but the carrot was nice and sweet, and I enjoyed the carrot. because I liked it, the crunchiness and the sweetness also.
So it seems like the flavors were heightened, whether it was salt or sweet. And that's actually a really good point, because sometimes we're told we're eating too much salt, right? Like packaged foods tend to be high in salt, and a lot of doctors don't want us to have too much salt. So if we're tasting it and really noticing that something is salty, we may reduce our salt intake if that's something that we're being told is better for us, by the slower eating, noticing the flavors. And similarly with the sweet, let's say we're supposed to be reducing our, and you had I think it was an apple you said, so that's a healthy sweet item. But let's say I did have some ginger cookies here. Let's say we are supposed to reduce our sugar intake. Well, if we really notice the sweetness, maybe one cookie will be satisfying versus 2 or 3 when we're just mindlessly gobbling them down. So it could have those kind of health benefits as well, and that is something that the nutritionist talks about in this book. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Margie.
Yeah, I think I added that you hadn't, and I was just curious, is I smelled it also.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention.
So yeah, like I had cheese, like raisin didn't smell that much, but I had cheese. So I really tried to like experience the smell of the cheese before I put it into my mouth. And so I
That's
savored it
really
more.
good point. Very good point. None of the items that I have right in front of me have much of a smell, so I forgot to mention it. But yes, absolutely. And digestion, right, even starts at the smell. You can observe. I used to have a big dog, a rescue dog, and when I would cook for him, because his stomach was a mess, so I had to cook for him. You couldn't have regular dog food because of all his allergies. So I would be cooking, meat for him. And the smell, you would observe him, he started drooling. So digestion starts with the nose. And I know I sometimes find myself almost drooling when I smell a good meal. So when you're having the saliva increase, that is starting the digestive process already with the olfactory system. Thanks for reminding me of that, Margie.
Irene had her hand raised.
Irene?
Yeah, hi. I noticed at the beginning when I was eating, I really wasn't conscious what I was eating. I was eating. And I noticed that when I was looking and feeling and smelling, I can even remember it better right now. than I can at the beginning when I was just eating, because it just made a bigger impression with me, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine for so many of us who grew up with the, what are they called? The TV dinners and, the fast food, the TV dinners and sitting in front of the TV, watching shows and eating. So imagine how little we're even noticing what we're eating with that additional distraction. And, I recall many meals where we did that. I think some people still do that every day. They're watching, hopefully not the news, but I think the news, which is stressful, creates, increases like our cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormones in the body, which is the opposite of what we want. We want to be relaxing and increasing the digestive system and not the stress system. So yeah. And why don't we, let me just go to the second slide. Anyone else notice the difference from, and we haven't even done the full yet mindful eating. This is just the beginning. So for those of you who came in late, we started with a little 3-part breathing, and then we were eating while we were talking without focusing on the food. And then we took a food item or two with different consistencies and really focused on it, first looking at it and then eating it. Now I have a message here about classical conditioning. Yeah, so our lives are full of conditioning in all respects. And certainly if we were raised to really appreciate our food, maybe that is a different situation than many of us who were raised like eating in front of the TV, watching movies, or like I said, sitting around the TV watching the news, getting all stressed about the world situation. So let's go on. I want to read from the book. So if you came in late, it's called Savor by Thich Nhat Hanh, and then a nutritionist. It's a paperback, and I'm only reading really from the meditation parts, not anything about nutrition or weight loss or diet. So I'm going to read from chapter 2. Are you really appreciating the apple? And of course, you could substitute any food for the apple. And it's called an apple meditation. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, the apple in your hand is the body of the cosmos. And I'm going to read the parts that I highlighted. It's actually quite a lot, so I'm going to edit. So take an apple out of our refrigerator. Wash it, dry it. Before taking a bite, pause for a moment. Look at the apple in your palm and ask yourself, when I eat an apple, am I really enjoying it? Or am I so preoccupied with other thoughts that I miss the delights that the apple offers me? If you're like most of us, you may answer yes to the second question more often than the first. For most of our lives, we've eaten apple after apple without giving it a second thought. And yet, in this mindless way of eating, we've denied ourselves the many delights present in the simple act of eating an apple. Turn the page. So when we eat the apple, let's concentrate on just eating the apple. Try not to think of anything else. Be still. Don't eat the apple while you're driving. Don't eat it while you're walking. Don't eat it while you're reading. Just be still. Being focused and slowing down will allow us to truly savor all the qualities of the apple, the sweetness, aroma, freshness, juiciness, crispness. Even take a moment to look at it again. Even breathe in and out a few times consciously to help us focus and become more in touch with the apple. Most of the times, we barely look at the apple we are eating. We grab it, take a bite, chew it, and then swallow. This time, we'll look at the apple. What color is it? What kind of apple is it? What is it here, Margie? What does it smell like? Going through these thoughts, we realize that an apple is not just simply a snack to quiet a stomach. It's something more complex. It's something part of a greater whole. So let's give the apple a smile and then slowly take a bite and chew it. When we're chewing it, let's concentrate on what it feels like in our mouths, what it tastes like, what it's like to chew and swallow it. There's nothing else to fill our mind. Let go of projects, deadlines, worries, to-do lists, fears, sorrows, angers. No past, no future, just the apple. And then so I'll skip down to the bottom. So living in this present moment, we can really appreciate and receive what the apple offers us, and we become more alive. We're living in the here and now. In today's world, mindless eating and mindless living are all too common. We're propelled by the fast pace of high-tech living, instant messages, emails, internet, phone. We're always on call, always being expected to respond instantaneously. Our lives suffer because of this. So, oh, and then he talks about even how the food industry will package up apples already pre-cut in plastic bags, as if that's better than eating a whole apple. But it's done that way, you know, to go hand in hand with our fast-paced life. We're eating on autopilot, eating on the run, eating away our worries or anxieties from the day's demands, our to-do list, our irritations. If we're not conscious of the food we eat and not actively thinking about that apple, how can we even taste it and get the pleasure of eating it? And then this part we're also going to do next. So let's view the apple even on a grander scale. And we can do this with any food item. We'll do this in a moment. Look deeply at the food. See the farmer who tended it, the tree, the blossom that became the fruit, the fertile earth. See the sunshine, the clouds, the rain, all that went into making the apple. But also, and this is somewhere in another chapter, also realize the trucker, the transportation that brought us the apple, where it was sold, the person that works in the store, and how connected we all are actually to one another. Even going beyond the apple for transportation, even who built the roads and the infrastructure. And so this one piece of food is emblematic of how interconnected we all are. To me, that was kind of a mind-blowing concept, just to look at the food and realize, wow, this represents how we all are so deeply connected. So I'll put this book aside for now and so I do not have an apple, but I have a plum. Does anyone have an apple or an orange? Maybe a piece of fruit, since we had our apple chapter, but certainly pick whatever piece of food you like. And go ahead, take a small piece of it. I'm going to do a slice, and this one looks really juicy. So I'm going to grab a napkin so I don't make a mess all over my face on a recorded Zoom. Now let's take the food item, look at it, and add the smile. Smile to the food. Let's look at the food in that broader way, thinking about, oh yeah, how did I even get this food into my home or the center? Wow, how many people were involved with getting this piece of food to me? And let's take a moment to appreciate them, thank them, even if we're just imagining, envisioning who they may be. And if it is a piece of food that's of nature, let's do the beginning of that chapter where we think about whether it's coming from a tree, or maybe it was you were eating something that was a vegetable from the ground. So I know many of you were eating different things, but looking in your mind's eye at the source of where this food item came from. And again, the weather, what made it grow, and really appreciating, wow, it's kind of a miracle, right? To have this piece of fruit arriving to me and all that went into it. So you can offer it your thanks, and let's go ahead and take a bite. And again, I hope I won't make a mess all over. So here we go. And then eat slowly. Try to really pulverize the food. Chew it fully. Now I'm going to put this down. If you want, you can even close your eyes. And notice what happens when we remove the vision sense. The vision sense for most of us, not everyone, I don't have glasses, is very, very strong. When we close our eyes, sometimes the taste sense can take over without that visual, stimulation, external stimuli. And sometimes the foods have multiple flavors, like this plum is kind of sour and sweet at the same time. So maybe you're noticing that as well. Certainly fast food, they have a trick, the companies have creating foods that are sweet and salty at the same time, and with enough fat, and that really is creates like an addictive. That's the goal of some of the fast food, like chips. So if you're done with your food, let's just sit before we chat again and notice how that experience went, how that food item tasted. And then you can open your eyes. And did anyone have an interesting experience or a question or anything you would like to mention? Raise your hand. Barbara, go ahead.
Well, I find being quiet, I'm eating much slower and I'm really tasting the food and noticing the texture, which I don't usually do. And my question is, do you think music would enhance or inhibit your sensation of eating?
That's a wonderful question. My thought would be that it depends on the type of music. So yesterday in the beginning of class, or Sunday Riverdale services class, I held up that photocopy of the cover of the Dr. Emoto book, The Messages of the Water, Hidden Messages of the Water, where and I think he's passed away, but he had a number of books and experiments where he would freeze water crystals and play different types of music, whether it was classical music or heavy metal. He would also do the same experiment with words. I love you. I hate you. And he would then look at the water as it began to freeze, creating these different shapes. And the ones, according to his experiments, and I'm sure it's been replicated by other people, where there was beautiful, relaxing music or positive words, the crystals were very, very pretty. When there were words that said, like, I hate you, you suck, whatever, it wouldn't even create like a crystal figure. It would just be very just not aesthetically pleasing. So with that in mind, his theory was that what we say to ourselves or what people are saying to us or what we're even listening, music especially, impacts our bodies, right? Because we have a lot of fluid in our bodies. I think most of the body is comprised of fluid. So that was the idea. So I would think anything that is relaxing to the nervous system helps the digestion. So if it's classical music or new age music, other kind of music out there that is relaxing, I think that would probably be a benefit. I think if it was like, very negative, there's some music out there that's very negative, misogynistic, that probably would have the reverse effect. That would be just my intuition and then relating it to Dr. Emoto's works. You also bring up an interesting point. When I did one of my first yoga trainings, we learned how to make ghee, which is clarified butter and used in Ayurvedic cooking. And my teacher, he had lived at Kripalu when it was actually an ashram. Now I was just there. It's open, to the public. It's been for decades. But they had to chant yoga chants while they were cooking, if that was part of their duties. And I know in other ashrams or meditation centers, people are chanting positive chants while they're cooking. And I don't know if they're still doing it at Kripalu, but I can tell you I was there for 5 days last week. When I'm at Kripalu or Omega or any retreat center, I do eat my meals alone, in quiet. I take them outside, usually looking at the scenery. I tell you, even the salads there just popped. Everything tasted so good. And I was thinking to myself, also knowing that I was going to teach this, okay, I wonder if they're still chanting when they cook the food at Kripalu. Obviously, I live here. I'm here in Massachusetts. I'm only 20 minutes away from Kripalu, so I'm getting the same, local foods. The flavors are not popping the same way. So, there's something there where I was really taking my meal. I was really appreciating it. They have beautiful view of the mountains. So I don't know, maybe they are chanting over the food. So that's something. You don't have to chant, obviously. It could be even singing, being happy. We talked about it in my first yoga training as well. We don't know when we go to a restaurant if the chefs, the sous chefs, the food preparers are angry, if they've had a fight. Are we absorbing that energy through the food? We don't know. So, it is important if we are home, we have the ability at home cooking to not be fighting, arguing, but even when we're looking at the food, preparing it, chopping it, to be in that mindful, hopefully happy place. So thanks for bringing that up, Barbara.
That reminded me of something my son always said growing up, that grandma puts love in her food. I can taste it.
Wow. Yeah. Right. And kids are very intuitive. So, but I'm sure most of us have heard this concept before, because I think in the past, before TVs and the internet, it was like people gathered in the kitchen, and it was different. So I think we're trying to get back to that now. Now, anyone else before I wanted to read one more thing? Oh my gosh, time is really going quickly. So we have about 10 more minutes. Anyone else? Did you put anything in the chat? Okay, so let me look at what else I have tagged here in the book. And then we'll okay. So here is, there is a chapter in the book just on the mindful eating. Some parts of the book have other aspects of mindfulness, walking, etc. So eating mindfully every day. And Thich Nhat Hanh writes, reserve a time for dinner, turn off the TV, put away the homework, magazines, newspapers, mail. If you're eating with others, work together to help prepare the dinner. Sit down and practice conscious breathing a few times to bring body and mind together. Be fully present. And then after a few conscious breaths, you can even look at each other with a gentle smile. And then, of course, don't forget to smile to yourself. When we look at the food in such a moment of peace, the food becomes real, reveals our connection with it and everything else. And we've already talked about that. Another thing to do, which we haven't yet spoken about, is when we look at the food on the table, it's helpful to name each dish: soup, salad, entree, appetizer, etc. Calling something by its name helps us touch it deeply and see its true nature. And then we realize that every food is precious. So many people are hungry and without family. When we eat in mindfulness, we even generate compassion in our hearts for these people. And then he goes on. I'm skipping around here. So your practice of mindful eating is also an example for others. These are 7 practices of a mindful eater. And the book gets a little repetitive. So 1, honor the food. We can even, in our minds, or say it aloud, acknowledge the farmer, thank the person who prepared the salad, refrain from hashing over work or the news, refrain from arguing. So at his Plum Village Practice Center, so he created these meditation centers, they eat in silence for the first 20 minutes of every meal. You can experiment with a silent meal at home or even just a silent cup of tea. But you don't have to eat every meal in silence to become a more mindful eater. All right. Second one, engage all 6 senses. So notice the sound, the color, the smells, the textures, your mind's response to them, not just the taste. Chew and notice its taste, the food's taste, as if it's the first time you've ever had it. Okay, number 3, serve in modest portions. Moderation is an essential component of mindful eating. Number 4, savor small bites and chew thoroughly. This can help improve our digestion since the process of breaking down our foods begins with enzymes in the mouth. Chew each bite until it's liquefied. That's pretty hard. I'm not even gonna say how many bites he's saying in this chapter. We'll just say chew thoroughly. Chewing allows the palate to taste the food better as well. Number 5, eat slowly to avoid overeating. Mindful eaters practice this so they're not overtaxing their bodies or even overtaxing the planet's resources, consuming more food than they need. In Chinese medicine, it's recommended to eat until you're 80% full. I sometimes find too that if I eat till I'm too full, you don't realize that until like a half hour later. So if you always leave a little bit of room, in about 20 minutes, you do feel full. It just takes time for the body to realize that. Another hint that he offers is you can even put down your utensils between bites, and this helps slow down. All right, number 6, don't skip meals, because then it's harder to make mindful choices at that next meal. Also, that's something when we go shopping, they say don't food shop when you're really hungry, because then we may not make the best choices. So I'll leave that. And let's see, we have about 5 more minutes. Take a food item that a consistency that we haven't yet done. Something, does everyone have something mushier, like yogurt or cheese or pudding? Let's do something of that consistency and see how that goes. But we're gonna now add even that component of smiling to one another and smiling to the food. So I have some organic cottage cheese, Nancy's. I love this line. So I'm going to open this up, and I realized, oh, here I have a fork. Okay, and I don't know in the center, what food items are left, but go ahead. Whatever food you have, we'll do our smile meditation first. Okay, here we go. So let's go back, because I know some of you came in a little late. Let's just do two breaths, and then I'll answer that question in a moment about GERD. So again, earlier in class, we did hand to heart center, hand to belly. You could even just start with your hands to the belly buttons, or both hands to the heart center. Take 2 breaths here. Again, reconnecting to ourselves in the present moment. And then already let a little smile form on the lips. Smile to yourself. Let's smile to our digestive systems. Thinking about it, starting at the nose, the mouth, and then all the way down the throat area, esophagus, large, small intestines, etc., all the way down. stomach. Thanking our digestive systems, even if we are having some acid reflux or issues, still thank our systems. All right, you can open the eyes if they were closed, and then take a moment to look at our food, whatever. I'm doing the cottage cheese, and let's smile. Thank you, cottage cheese, or thank you, apple, whatever you have. Again, absorb the food through the eyes as well, looking at the color, consistency, interesting shapes. Cottage cheese actually has more interesting shapes than I ever realized now that I'm looking at it. Almost like snow with all the different crystals. All right, let's go ahead and eat. And if you want, you can, again, close the eyes once you take your bite of food. Take your time. I'm sorry if I'm talking with, I'm not, I'm talking about a meeting, so I'm not exactly demonstrating this, but take your time and I'll be quiet so I can eat. And notice if you had something soft, like I did the cottage cheese, wow, that actually I was able to swallow that so much faster than my rice cake or the licorice or even the fruit item. How did it taste? This is the first time I really noticed like this cottage cheese is actually a little more sour than I have realized in the past. So anyone want to offer a comment? Beth?
Yeah, I have some rice pudding here. And I usually eat it pretty quickly. Too quickly, basically. And this time it took me, well, I just had one spoonful and took me, well, I guess it was 2 swallows, but I was more conscious of the texture of it. And it is sweet. It's not, it's actually without sugar, it's low sugar. Yeah, slow sugar, but I've gotten used to it. I don't mind it. So it's definitely a good idea to slow down and to enjoy, the taste and the whole experience.
So it sounds like you noticed a difference in a food
Yeah,
item.
I did. Noticed a little difference. Yeah.
Good. Oh my gosh, I love rice pudding. It's one of my favorite foods. It's such a comfort food, especially with a little whipped cream on top.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
And anyone else have an interesting experience?
I just appreciate you incorporating closing our eyes and smiling. I've been trying to do that on different things, moving throughout my life, closing my eyes. I'm trying to work on balance in a safe place or smiling to try to kind of calm down or to increase the dopamine. But I hadn't thought about doing those things while eating. So I appreciate this. Thanks for including us on Zoom and for letting me in, even though I was late.
Oh, of course, you're welcome. Yeah, I think for most of us, this is still like a relatively new concept. Think about the restaurants, especially, when I'm in New York and we go out to dinner. Of course, I'm doing less indoor dining these days, but even out in the outdoor areas in the sheds, it's really loud. It's chaotic. The restaurants seem to just be increasing the volume of music, and that means that we're all shouting over the music more. And it's kind of like the opposite these days of, a relaxing dining experience. And I think this is what they think consumers want. And maybe, I don't know, maybe younger people do. But I kind of miss the days where restaurants were a little quieter. You could hear one another, not just the person right next to you.
Well, I also think that the restaurants encouraging you to be in and out quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, like as soon as you sit down, it's like, okay, here's your menu. What do you want? The food seems to come much quicker than I used to remember food coming. So they don't really encourage you to eat slowly and to socialize with people. They want the volume, I guess. They want you
Yes.
in and then they want you out.
You're absolutely right. And some of them now even have on the menu, like you have an hour and a half at this table and then we have to turn it. And I
Mhm.
think that's been since COVID, you know, and the economic challenges. Yeah. So there's one more comment, then I do think we have to let
One
the-
person here, I don't know if there's anybody else there, but then we have one person here who wanted to.
Hi,
And I've got to stop you because we have to start this other class.
yeah, so we'll have one
So
more.
one more person.
Okay.
I want to say it quickly. I was eating a carrot and to me, and I was thinking about what you were saying, it's like the first time I ever had a carrot and I appreciated it in a way I've never appreciated a carrot before. It was amazing.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
You're welcome. Yeah, this was really fun. Thank you for your comments as well in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me
We
here.
definitely have to do this again. This was-
Yeah, thank you, Margie and Barbara Riverdale for hosting this. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Melissa. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Bye, you're welcome.
Take
Learned
care.
something. Bye.
Bye, guys. Sorry, I gotta cut you out. Bye.